This is a program about inspiring an anti-corruption culture in the organization and managing corruption risk propensity to do business safely while building a high-integrity corporate tradition. 66 years ago, when Tunku Abdul Rahman stood at the Merdeka Square declaring our independence, never would he have thought that Malaysia will one day be plagued with a culture of corruption, draining away its wealth. A country endowed with abundant natural resources that are exploited for the benefit of a few well-connected people. A nation notorious to be among the top 5 countries for its flight of money. Except that the economic sizes of those other countries are many times more than Malaysia's. Money that has left this country to enrich others, in turn impoverishing Malaysians. Since 2004, subsequent governments have initiated various anti-corruption plans and programs. In spite of the visions and aspirations, those initiatives failed to harness and reverse the corruption tendencies. And the global perception of Malaysia as a corruption-prone nation had spurts of hope that immediately afterwards went down. Only now there seems to be a glimmer of hope. A new government is saying all the right things to give hope to the people, confidence to the business community, and gain the attention of investors. A redirected MACC armed with wide powers given by the MACC Act 2009, was further strengthened by Section 17A of the Act. This section finally recognizes that, though corruption is more prevalent in the public sector, changes in the public sector can only happen if the private sector is also included. For in most cases, the private sector is also involved. Corporations are now held accountable and harsh punishments are sanctioned by the Act. Fines of up to Ringgit Malaysia 1 million or 10 times the money involved, whichever is higher, or a prison term of 20 years, or both can be imposed on corporations and their senior management. However, since it is possible that acts of corruption can come from many different persons in an organization, the law gives an exception to the penalties. Where a corporation can show that it has done its best to prevent corruption, then that corporation would not be held accountable for the corrupt behaviors of its people. However, corporations need to show evidence of having done their best. And this could be shown with the implementation of the Malaysian Prime Minister's Guidelines on Adequate Procedures, which is an anti-corruption management framework. Or corporations could implement the ISO 37001 Anti-Bribery Management System. Since the participation of the private sector is essential for bringing Malaysia out of its corruption situation, the Securities Commission is actively promoting a corruption-free culture within the capital market over which it has purview. Further to the implementation of the MACC Act, it is expected that this will make Malaysia, once again, a preferred investment destination. The Securities Commission, within its organization, has implemented the Prime Minister's Guidelines on Adequate Procedures, as well as the ISO 37001. And has issued an array of guidelines across the capital market, including guidance for directors and shareholders to address corruption issues within companies. Now that the corporations have protected themselves by implementing anti-corruption or bribery management systems, and yet an act of corruption has taken place, it now falls upon individuals in the organization to be accountable. And the penalties for individuals can go up to Ringgit Malaysia 100,000 or 10 years imprisonment or both. But where does the individual draw the line between business and corruption? The line between meeting for a working dinner and bribery. Is inviting a customer to give a talk at a holiday resort overnight, on customer expectation a hidden form of bribery? Can natural friendships develop with customers? Can a customer invite you to a wedding and can you give gifts? These are questions that concerns businesses. Business can go on as usual, free of intentional corruption, but in a friendly manner, where there are dinners, talks at resorts and gifts at weddings. But when something significant happens that attracts the attention of the authorities and regulators, then all these little acts to build relationships will go on to support charges for that one significant event. This can happen in any organization, in spite of the controls in place. How can the individuals avoid this? Avoiding this can only happen when the individuals in the organization understand how they can fall into this without realizing and what mindset they must have and precautions they need to take when performing business-related activities. Most importantly, they need to free themselves from any tendency to act in risky manners, the propensity for corruption risk. This is the tendency of a person to take risks with regards to corruption, including bribery. Different people have different tendencies or propensities for such risks. The propensity for such risk be individuals depends on their values, beliefs, experiences, the environment, ambitions and corruption risk tolerance. This needs to be identified, managed and if possible neutralized. This training program is about that. Realigning the propensity for corruption risk to an acceptable and risk-free level. A specially developed board game, considering the MACC Act, causes participants to experience environments of corruption and integrity, the risks involved, the impact on corporations, society, and individuals. The program also challenges participants to explore their values and beliefs on corruption and helps them to change or improve their value systems if necessary. How corruption creeps into culture is reviewed, and what individuals can do to prevent this is explored. We also learn where we stand compared to other nations and what are the differences. The program also reviews counter-corruption initiatives of the government and other organizations, that there are widespread attempts to curtail corruption, the changes taking place, and how this affects corporations and individuals. We then examine the Prime Minister Guidelines on Adequate Procedures and the ISO 37001 to understand what procedures and controls need to be in place to create a business-friendly and anti-corruption management system. Then the program looks into the legal framework on corruption, as well as corporate and individual accountabilities. The various types of offenses, the people who can be affected, and the extent of punishments and penalties are reviewed. This is essential for individuals to understand how they can be affected, and the precautions they should take. For senior management, the program also explores the initiatives of the Securities Commission and their implications. It looks into the relevant guidelines, their requirements, and how these can be achieved. The program also explores the impact corruption has on the economy of the country, the living standards of the people, and overall success of everyone. Each participant then reviews and defines the roles they can play to create a corruption risk-free environment for the organization to carry out business without concerns for risky behavior that can be interpreted as corruption. The achievement at the end of the program is the management of individual corruption risk propensity to protect oneself, others and the organization from legal repercussions, in the short or long term, while being able to carry out business safely.